This podcast is part of the Gonna Geek Network. The opinions expressed may not represent other podcasts or affiliates of Gonna Geek. Check out more podcasts at GonnaGeek.com and get ready because geekiness starts in 3, 2, 1.
You come across a podcast about critically loved movies and the three geeks that test them. Your fear heightens as you notice it's October, and what was Arthouse legends becomes something darker, more sinister. You notice adult language and content and carefully guard the ears of the innocent. In the back of your mind, you know that spoilers are ahead and opt to watch the movie before journeying forward. You take one last breath of air before entering
the Arthouse of Horror.
Beware, we are coming close to the end of Arthouse of Horror. This is the MovieDude Eric, and if you can make it through this podcast without falling asleep, you won't be turned into an emotional veggipod. And along with me are...
But what is wrong with the veggipod, Eric? This is Kent, and I'd like you to have this flower. It's very pretty, isn't it? Lobster, would you like a flower? Just put it in this vase. Here.
I'm good, Ken.
Take it, Lobster.
I'm fine. Listen, guys, thank you. This is John Lobster here. Thank you for joining me on this caper. Wait, that's not a caper. That's a rat turd.
I'll say, and this is Anthony Bachman. Would you two like to be a vegan?
And
how do you know they're a pod person?
They'll tell you.
They'll tell you.
Yeah.
In this episode, we're discussing Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1978, starring Donald Sutherland, Brooke Adams, Leonard Nimoy, Jeff Goldblum, Veronica Cartwright, Art Hindle, and directed by Phillip Kaufman.
Don't forget, Robert Duvall as the swinging priest.
Was that? I thought it was.
That was Robert Duvall. That was a cameo.
I was also going to say starring...
Right at the beginning, he's on the swing, and that's totally Robert Duvall.
Yep. That's awesome. Yeah, he's looked creepy, but I thought it was him. But I was also going to say starring Donald Sutherland's hair.
Yes.
Well, of course.
His hair is majestic in this film.
That's an Anglo-fro for the ages.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, we there's some definite hair we got to be talking about. It's like we shouldn't be worrying about the veggiepods. We should be worrying about the attack of.
Well, this is the tale of how he goes of how President Snow starts as a low-level health inspector, toiling in the government, and works his way up to overseeing the Hunger Games. Because after the pod invasion, how do you keep the districts in line?
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
That is so
Assuming
bad.
you win. But this does not assume he wins.
That is so bad, so bad. But
It's
gentlemen,
stretching there.
I have to say something here. This is a movie that I honestly came to almost by accident. I was interested in seeing the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers for a long time, and so on my grand tour through the Netflix DVD piles, I came across this, and then of course I found out there were 3 other versions of this movie that were made. So I did all 4 of them over a weekend.
Oh wow!
And I got
so let's count them off because there's the 1950s original, right?
I believe it was 61.
61.
Okay.
And then there's this.
Yep.
And then there's another one in the
1993.
late 80s or early 90s.
1993 had Body Snatchers, and then 2007's The Invasion.
The Invasion with Nicole Kidman, Daniel Craig.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
And Daniel Craig's really horrible American accent.
Yeah, original Invasion was 56.
I was wrong. I admit it. I was wrong.
And less than 61, there was another invasion. Who knows?
There might have been. They do remake this one every once in a while.
I know.
And it gets remade almost in spirit a bunch. Like I was thinking of other movies that kind of share a similar vibe. The Faculty came to mind, which is another one. I thought of The World's End. which kind of
no. The World's End was
comedy.
an homage to the Invasion of Body Snatchers. Even Edgar
Oh
Wright
yeah,
says that this was.
Yeah, no. I totally get it, but it there's every so often there are films that do this, or TV shows use this trope. The episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, I believe it was called Conspiracy, that it has Starfleet being taken over by these like little bugs that go in your neck and stuff. So
I mean, what do you think Battlestar Galactica is, or the remake?
Well, right, but I mean, even Stargate with the Goa'uld, the X-Files does it with the black oil. There was a show, a really awesome show, I think in the late 90s, called Dark Skies, that was set in the 60s, but it was kind of like the same thing. That was really good. So I mean, I feel like this is almost like it's less of doing a remake at this point, as this is like a sci-fi archetype that you do, like the secret invasion storyline, and how do you portray that?
Okay, but believe it or not, when we get to the 1978 version, this was just after Star Wars, and everyone was more interested in doing a big budget, super hyped, epic sci-fi fantasy.
Right.
And Phillip Kaufman, who, by the way, is one of the writers for Raiders of the Lost Ark and would go on to direct The Right Stuff later on, he decided that he was more interested in doing a modest budgeted version of a film from the 50s, and actively went out of his way to get Don Siegel, the original director's blessing, with Don Siegel kind of giving him inspiration, because as it turned out, because of all things 50s, the version he wanted to do was a lot darker and a lot funnier than the version that he was allowed to do by the execs and the producers. He wanted to make a kind of a horror comedy, and they told him to take out all the comedy from that version. And I actually...
And you can see, because they start telling a joke, and then they're like, oh no, we've heard this one before, and then they never tell the end of the joke.
Well, that is one of the things about this one that is kind of a telling, or kind of a joke in itself, an in-joke on the set. But did any of you see any of the other versions of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or have you seen this version prior to this screening? And Anthony, why don't you start us off?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd seen the 93 Body Snatchers. That was the one I think I've seen the most times. I remember seeing this one, the 78, when I was really young. And I'm thinking maybe like I caught it on like a TBS or a TNT like rewatch. Because I remember having commercials. I remember it not really sitting down and paying attention to it. So this time felt like actually watching this one all the way through for the first time. And then I know I haven't seen the original one from the 50s, but I did see the Invasion with Daniel Craig, which that one I liked. And then actually The Faculty, I think, is probably my favorite version of this story.
Yeah, just because you get to see all those young hot starlets.
Well, that, and I like the fact that it was literally teenagers coming up with a way to like attack the invaders. So it wasn't so much running away and trying to hide or anything. Like literally, they were, fighting back from almost the beginning of that movie.
I get you. All right, what about you, Kent?
This is one of those odd movies that I vaguely remember, like being super. I would have had to have been like maybe 10, seeing it on TV or something. So I like have snippets in my head of this version, but I can't remember it all, and I can't see like my family not watching this at some point. Now, my mom, she won't watch it, but it has Leonard Nimoy in it. Somebody else in the family would have put this on.
Yeah. What about you, Lobster? Sorry.
No memory. Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever actually watched an official version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I can name 5. Right. So there's the original, there's this, and then there's the 90s one, and then the Invasion in the 2000s. I know it's been made and remade a bunch of times. I think this is the first time I've watched an official one, but I've seen so many knockoffs and imitations of it. The one that sticks out in my mind is the Life Goes On episode from 1991 called, I think it was called Invasion of the Thatchers or something like that. Or the Thatchers, I don't know, something like that. And for some reason, I remember that. And the only part of that episode I remember is the product placement where, like, the dad gets a Bowflex and one of the kids sees him using the Bowflex, but he only sees the shadow and thinks it's like his alien appendages coming out or something as he's using it. And that's the only thing I remember from that. But I can think of so many examples of ways that other shows or movies have kind of used the same trope. And I think my favorite is The World's End. I'm a huge fan of the Cornetto trilogy. And that film, I think, perfectly encapsulates the absurdity of this kind of an invasion story. And it matches so well with the humor, kind of what the paranoia of this kind of thing is about. Because this kind of story is not necessarily about a practical scale of an alien invasion. It's about the paranoia that goes along with then thinking that there's something going on and trying to figure out what's going on and why are people acting strange and what is this all about. And I think The World's End does that so well that that would be kind of my go-to in this kind of scenario. If you wanted me to watch a film like this, I would probably say, okay, let's watch The World's End because it does it well and it's funny too.
I absolutely love The World's End. It's my favorite of Cornetto's, and it was actually my number one film of I think 2013, if I'm not correct, or 2012. So yeah, that was so that shows how much I love that film. I gotta say though, when it comes to the inimitable Invasion of the Body Snatcher movies, this is possibly my favorite, although all of them have something very unique and very fascinating about them. Some more than others, the Invasion. But it's just that this particular film did something that very few PG movies ever do, and that's really be truly scary. This really gets that. And you know, we talked about body horror with Videodrome. We've talked about kind of some of the monster stuff. And we've talked about movies that kind of tackle these particular things, conspiracy and paranoia and stuff. But this kind of blends it all together, and it uses a very interesting cast and a very interesting use of practical effects to really get to the terrifying elements that this story goes for. And so I'm very excited to see what you think of this film now, coming in from today's perspective. But considering that I'm the only one who's actually seen the original, I've got to say that the original film was made and was unintentionally, but still very clearly looking at communism and the Red Scare. It was during the period of the Red Scare. And so this whole idea of the communists can come up and bite you kind of thing definitely played in that particular film. And that's something that seems to be a part of almost all of the invasion type films. What do you see as being any of the particular themes of this, considering that it's coming from the late 70s? And, we've had all, the Watergate scandals and, environmentalism is becoming a big deal. Do you see any of these issues coming to mind when it comes to the themes of this film?
It could still be communism. I mean, people were still worried about it. So
the Cold War is still going on, and this is also the period where we get things like Red Dawn comes out. I think a few years after this, and so like those, and so those ideas are still prevalent in terms of espionage is still a thing. Just because the Cold War and the hot spots have kind of simmered down a little bit, that we're still kind of dealing with those ideas, and it's still fodder for entertainment. I think Watergate is a good thing to kind of point to, and there's an example of government misconduct. It's an example of how the sort of witch hunt that followed afterwards and getting at conspirators and the kind of idea that eyes are everywhere and you don't necessarily know who to trust. I think that fits in really well with the ideas of this movie. And I think the fact that everyone involved is kind of a government employee. And then I think the other thing that Leonard Nimoy represents in the film is you're riding the wave of pop psychology through this period. And the idea that everyone and everybody is seeing an analyst or a shrink or somebody, and everyone is kind of grappling with these existential issues. And I think this fits really well into that in addition to kind of the geopolitical ideas, the kind of internalized sense of self and paranoia that goes along with that. Like, oh, I knew him and we've been together forever, but he's just changed and he's not the same person. And am I crazy? And I think that all fits really well in with this movie.
Yeah. What about you, Anthony? Do you have any ideas as to what this movie is kind of getting at?
I would think there was a big part to do with disillusionment. Looking at disillusionment and their faith in the government, faith in relationships. Looking at the tail end, these being adults that were around for the tail end of the 60s, and now they're seeing the tail end of the 70s. They're seeing the end of the the hippie movement. They're heading into what's going to be the Coke and Wall Street days. Just a big disillusionment of what America actually meant for Americans at the time.
Mm-hmm. You could also make an argument about, if this were not America at this time is seeing our old allies, some of our allies turning on us. Like, the Iran hostage thing happens right about this time.
Yeah.
So it's like, what happened to them? They were our friends. Now they're fighting us. They're not the same. They have been replaced. Well, the government was, but
yeah. Well, no, I think that especially this most recent time, I'm starting to see that this is a film that's about complacency, about the system trying to placate and to pacify and to create a society that will not they'll just accept. That the whole idea that you wake up in the next morning, everyone around you accepts the system as it is. And if you're outside of that, then you are you're the person that needs to be pacified. You're the one that needs to be, that needs to be put down. And that's something that I really didn't think about very much on prior ones. I always kind of took it as more of an environmental thing because it's coming from plants. Plants play a large part in the film. If you notice, there's a lot of green tint in the film, lots of green that's going on. So I thought that this is more environmental.
There's also some mud as well. There's a fair bit of brown too.
Yeah, very earthy.
The mud.
Yeah. Okay.
The mud on what's his name's behind that you see as he's getting out of the tub, or that brown leather half glove that Leonard Nimoy wears.
Yes, or the carpal tunnel thing.
Is that what that's supposed to be for?
Well, no. Well, it was a quirky thing that Nimoy wanted. It was, his golem, his the thing that he was going to channel his character through was this glove.
Yeah, there was. I think there was a story about somebody the director knew, or somebody involved that like they had like a burn on their hands, so they wore that to cover it, and. I don't even know.
Well, not from
it was
the
just
audio commentary that I've listened to.
Yeah, it was just something that he wanted to make his character's thing, like part of it, which I thought was kind of interesting. But this was a big... I mean, let's talk about Nimoy. Obviously, we recently lost Leonard Nimoy, and it's kind of fun to see him in roles that aren't Star Trek.
Yeah, and this was his first big role after Star Trek. He was typecasted up to this point.
And a young, vibrant Nimoy too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God, he's
right,
just. I mean, he just is bringing this character. I mean, from the first moment you see him, he's exciting and engaging and kind of hipster. Want to beat his butt
annoyingly.
Yesterday. My God, the guy.
I mean,
he's wearing a sweater
is,
and a smoking jacket. Fuck you.
Yes, he is the definition of a condescending psychiatrist. Like he's almost, speaking of typecasting, he's almost a stereotype of a pop psychiatrist in this film. And I think that, like, this is a year or two before Star Trek the Motion Picture and kind of the rejuvenation of Star Trek in film. And I kind of feel like if that hadn't happened, this would have been the type of roles we would have seen Nimoy in for the rest of his career. Like, he plays it so well, the kind of snobbery, he mansplains quite a bit in this film when he's like shaking Brooke Adams, and then
well, I mean, the first lady he has his hands on is wanting to hug her and her husband, and he is very condescending. Yeah, douche.
And you almost but you could almost count, like, if it's not for the emotion, this is kind of the same shtick that he had as Spock a little bit, which is he's always playing as the smartest guy in the room, or he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah.
So his attitude towards everybody else is through that lens.
Well, he kind of becomes the alpha pod,
Right, he does, right. Yeah. He's Pierce Brosnan in The World's End, right? Like, he's literally the same guy. He's the one that everyone looks up to in their kind of social circle.
Was the alpha in that one?
Well, the voice of Bill Nye was, but in Newton Haven, everyone looked up to the professor or the teacher, right? Pierce Brosnan's character, but he's the leader of their kind of social circle. That, like, there's no reason why the health inspector is going to be friends with the guy that owns the mud bath. Like, I couldn't figure out what the connection there was, but I think they're just all patients of his, and he uses his kind of practice to also build his social circle, because he's kind of connected with everybody in the city, including the mayor. And I think that they've all kind of, like, they've met each other through Leonard Nimoy.
Well, no, actually, what it is, I mean, yes, in a way, but the way that I kind of saw it, and the director kind of even brought this up in his commentary, which is that Sutherland and Nimoy were college friends, and Goldblum was a rival. He was a rival of Nimoy, and so they kind of went in the same circles, and they kind of fought, and that they're just kind of how rivals become friends or frenemies of sorts. That's kind of where that all went. And of course, Veronica Cartwright is Goldblum's wife, and Brooke Adams is a coworker that there's perhaps a little bit of sexual tension on, even though she's dating someone else at this period. Jeffrey.
He's a douche even before he gets turned into a pod person.
I know, it's like I would have killed him before he was a pod person.
You mean full-size Peter Dinklage there? Did
God.
you not get that vibe from him? That he just looks like a full-grown Peter Dinklage?
I kind of see it now, yeah.
It's pretty sad, but yeah, separated at birth, him and the
yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, whoa, this is weird. Yeah,
character from X-Men, whatever. The 70s.
In X-Men where he has the 70s haircut. Yeah,
it's like, oh god, it's the same person.
I wouldn't be surprised if the X-Men hairstylist had gone back to Invasion of the Body Snatchers for that. It was yeah. Oh, wow.
It would be good research material.
I mean, nothing says douche like that haircut. That's all I gotta say. But no, I mean, since we brought up the fact that we have that Sutherland and Adams are both low-level government inspectors, health inspectors, especially in San Francisco, which is a very food-heavy type of place. You could definitely see a reason why they would have their own wing of their own department at City Hall.
Well, yeah. It depends how big City Hall is. It could just be so huge that, give them a spot, too.
Well, have you ever been to San Francisco?
No. I know it's expensive as hell to live there, but now that's because of tech industry, not the 70s.
I know we're a little bit ahead of ourselves with Reagan and deregulation, but do you think kind of also this is a commentary on, we need a government office that's going to maybe make sure we aren't being invaded by aliens or something like that?
No.
We kind of need, the reason we have health inspectors is to go in and make sure that we're not all going to get food poisoning and it's going to turn into a health crisis. Or
well, actually, this comes from the original movie and in the book before, because in the original movie it was a small town doctor. It was all set in a small town in the original movie, and so when they decided they were going to make it a larger city, which I think is actually the better move, it's like, okay, well, we can't have a small town doctor, so it has to be someone of prevalence, someone who we could honestly see being able to have some influence. And so they decided, well, why not? And it has to be someone in the health industry. So why not it be some sort of government official? But of course, it can't be too big, because the whole point is that they cannot affect any change. So I think that what they were trying to say is that you have all this bureaucracy, but it gets you nowhere. That, you have all these people that are inspecting and are there for the public, to protect the public, and yet when the shit goes down, none of them are going to help you.
It's not what they're trained for. They're trained to stop you from eating something that will poison you. They're not trained to stop an alien invasion. That's somebody else's department.
I just love the fact that they were going over the composition of a baked potato. That's something that...
Yeah, he's either
something in here is
the
fake.
Sour cream is fake or it's the chives, but something
is off.
Something is off.
Yes.
The best line in the movie. The best line in the movie is when one of the characters says something about, I might have been infected by the aliens, but with all the crap that we eat and put in our bodies, who can be sure? And how true is that even today, that with the amount of chemicals and preservatives and hormones and everything that's in all of the food that we eat, that, how do you not know that there's some other element
I'm sure
there?
You can find a conspiracy site right now that says that's why GMO is evil. It could turn you into an alien.
Right.
Well, that's why GMO, they're keeping us alive. Because if the character's saying this in the 70s, imagine now we could have the alien invasion. They invade, they get into our bodies, and they instantly die. Yeah. Just because there's so many preservatives. We have no clue.
That'd be
We've
like
been invaded 8 times.
The house version of the War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
Right. You know that's why we put fluoride in the water, right? I mean, it's to stop aliens.
By the way, welcome back, Veronica Cartwright.
Yeah. So Veronica, the masseuse, she's moved down in the world, I think, from being from working on the Nostromo.
Well, the Nostromo is a year later. So.
Oh, that's where I recognized her from. Okay,
that's a good point.
I recognize the actress, but I couldn't place her.
Yeah, but she's she's actually done a few things. I didn't realize this until just now. She's actually the little girl in The Birds. I didn't realize that.
Yes, she's the little girl in The Birds. She does. I think she's in the '93 remake.
Yes, she is
as well. And is she in the 2001 at all? I know she shows up in. Is she in a TV show called Invasion or something?
I think so. I could be wrong on that one, though.
Yeah,
but I know that Veronica Cartwright, as soon as I saw her for this, I was like, oh, yeah, she is in this. That it's just that you just don't really see it. And then when I found out that the big reveal, I'm going to say that right now, when we get into it, we'll definitely get more into it. But I think that she should have a clause in her contract that says you have to tell her everything that's going to happen in the movie. Because apparently, multiple directors have had an issue with not telling her important parts until later in the film. I will say that, but no, it's just like, I love her in this film because she first off, she's the only one that really gets it, right? You know, if someone says it's an alien invasion, she goes, "I believe you."
Yeah.
Like, you do not have to convince her. Unlike with Alien, where she is like, "I don't want to believe it." Like, get over it. But no, it's just, I mean, she's fun. She's the one that has most of the comedy, and we're not talking about like, that she's like a klutz or anything. Her comedy is really pointed. I mean, you brought up, she was the one who told the joke about all the crap that we talk about. She's the one that.
Well, I don't think it was a joke. I think it was a comment on.
She's serious about it.
Oh no!
Yeah.
She was
like,
serious.
She's serious.
But at the same time, though, it is kind of.
I mean, let's be honest. This is a movie set in San Francisco in the 70s, and we are following like the least hippie people in the entire city. I feel.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like
Squareville.
everyone is very like, this is like this. They're like the Starbucks of
They're
of San
yuppies.
Francisco. Yeah, they're the yuppies. They're the
professionals.
Very sort of like the young Republican professionals. There's actually a joke in here about or maybe he's a Republican.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's like something about the fact that we're following these characters, and Veronica Cartwright and Jeff Goldblum are kind of the most hippy dippy of the characters, and even they are very. They're almost like blue collar because they're young small business owners. They're running this disgusting establishment.
Well, the mud baths? You don't think that the mud baths are a viable San Francisco institution?
I'm not saying that isn't like maybe it's comfortable and relaxing, but it is unsanitary as hell. Because
if you take a crap,
they were in there when the bubbles were coming up.
This was San Francisco in the 70s. Trust me, this is possibly the most hygienic place you could have that involves steam.
It could very well be. It could very well be. But when the bubbles were coming up, he's like, "Oh, there's something in there," meaning the bubbles weren't supposed to be coming up. That wasn't part of what it was. But it's I don't know. It that kind of grossed me out. And then when you see what's his name getting out, and you do see a bit of his bait and tackle, by the way, as he's climbing out of there.
Yeah.
And again, this is a PG-rated film, which has both toplessness and bottomlessness in it. This was before they tweaked the rating system.
And equal gendered, so we get a little of both.
Hey, it's just a very strange. It's a very eclectic group of friends. And while we were watching it, I was like, why are we following these people? Like, there must be a more interesting storyline that we can follow. But nope, we're stuck with these folks.
The more interesting people were taken out in the first few minutes of the invasion, so sorry.
Well, you wanted to be with the banjo player?
Actually, more time with him would have been
player
interesting.
and his dog.
And his dog.
Too.
By the
And
way,
his dog too.
They just don't get the faces right, do they?
No.
They don't. And I love that this is the second movie in Arthouse of Horror that has had a human face on an animal body.
Yeah.
To call back What We Do in the Shadows. That's a great little bit, not to go too far ahead, but a great little bit of pre-CGI practical effect, because that looks real and freaky as hell. Like that. And when they set it up with him sleeping next to the dog and Donald Sutherland comes along and kicks the pod and it starts to like splooge a little bit, and you're like, wow, I wonder if that, did that mess it up? Did he save it? Nope. It just like messed it up and the wires got crossed.
Yeah.
And, then when they're like, okay, we just have to act calm and collected and don't show any emotion and we'll blend right in. Well, what's going to rattle them but a dog with a bum's face on it run by?
Again, it was a callback to the original movie where when they're having to show no emotion, and in the first movie, a dog was about to get run over, and and one of them screamed out. And when that happened, it alerted everyone that there were humans in their midst. Which I thought it was a great. There's places where this thing actually does kind of go in this. It does kind of go in the same territory as the original film, but it does it in very unique and interesting ways. Like in the original film, the premise of it was brought out by a woman who's saying that her husband isn't her husband anymore. And in here, it's a husband that's talking about how his wife isn't his wife anymore. Which I thought was a pretty cool kind of reversal of sorts that happened here. But yeah, it's these kind of little insights that if you see the prior film, they kind of play off. And according to a couple of people, technically speaking, this is the sequel to the original film.
Really?
Yeah, and one of the big key factors here is that the guy who slams up against the door, the windshield, screaming about how they're coming, that's the main protagonist from the original film.
Okay.
And
nice.
And he actually has a scene in the original film where he does the exact same thing here.
It just took him a few years to get to San Francisco.
Well, did they win in the original?
Yes and no.
Because I can see it being a sequel if they won the first time.
Well,
and now he's
they were
it again.
alerted. The state was alerted of everything, and it gives you the end as the military and the government officials are going to take on this foe. The world has been alerted, and they're going to fight.
We dropped the nuke on this town. Oh darn!
Yeah. But so you could see this as a sequel if you wanted to, or it could be just a standalone. It works either way. I do love the fact that another one of the callbacks to the original movie is that when we see the spores in space as the opening shots, they do have this kind of bubble look to them. That's the same bubble effects that they used for the original film.
Okay, it just that opening felt very 50s.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love this callback to 50s horror films and 50s nostalgia and paranoia films at that. But what about you, Anthony? What do you think of these special effects?
I mean, for what they were working with at the time, the practical stuff was done really well. You could tell a lot of the pod work was just filming stuff, like pulling the flower into the pod and then rewinding the film and playing it backwards. Like
stop motion, a lot of stop motion work and stuff in this.
Yeah, well, this is the same stuff that they were using in Alien a year later. So
yeah. So I mean, a lot of that was great. Yeah, just that dog was that human mask wrapped on that poor dog's head, and it instantly creeped me out.
And he stuck his tongue out too, the dog licked through the mask. And I was
but for that effect, it made it even creepier.
Yeah,
because it seemed so wrong. And so that scene was stunning. So for what was probably a really limited special effects budget, I mean the bubbles flying through space and somehow making it through the atmosphere without burning up, I didn't quite buy at the beginning. But other than that, all of it seemed really fitting and seemed to work really well within the context of the movie.
Mm-hmm. So I guess the next thing we should talk about is really kind of the plan of the pod people, because this is a conspiracy, right? They have to hide in the shadows. They take people at night as they're sleeping. What do you think of how this system works? And believe it or not, on the recent Blu-ray for the Invasion of Body Snatchers, they actually have something where it shows that they actually thought out the whole system of how the pod people are created, the whole the way that the bodies are created, and the transference of memory to the pod. It was all thought out. But
nice.
Do you buy this? Do you kind of find yourself baffled by it? What is your impressions on just how the pod people are formed and how and the way that they kind of do this kind of bursting this pod? I mean, it's kind of like a flower, right? Where a flower ripens and then the seeds spread, and then they populate other places and then spread, and that's kind of how this thing goes, right?
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a zombie invasion kind of thing. You infect one person and they figure out how to infect somebody else. But the pod civilization, quote unquote, has kind of a thing figured out where they have to keep the memories. They could just decide, we're going to copy the physical form of somebody and screw the memories and just go on, and they could
can copy everything,
way, but
they can copy everything but emotion.
Yeah.
That's their Achilles heel.
And for the first few days of an invasion where it's critical, that's what it's set up for. Once you get to a certain point, they won't have to copy memory anymore. They just go, yeah, we just want to mass copy the people, and now we've got it. So I'm not quite sure how well thought out it is. I mean, they could go faster, but...
Well, one of the things I thought was kind of cool is that when we have this green hue in the film, there's one thing that has a very stark contrasting color, which is red, and that is the garbage truck.
Oh,
that comes
Donald
by
Sutherland's hair.
Yeah. Well,
I was going to say the flower seed, when they're in the small form.
You mentioned the garbage truck. I have to say that obviously we're talking about government here. The first government agency that you have to control has to be the garbage men, because
clean up,
right? They go everywhere and they're invisible.
Yeah.
So
and
if you need to move into every sector, every neighborhood, every part of the country quickly and quietly, you take over sanitation.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nowhere that they seem out of place. They can go anywhere, and nobody ever notices them. It's just a noise in the background.
And unlike, I mean, you could say, well, what about the Postal Service? Okay, so the Postal Service hands things out, but the garbage men collect things, and they put it in that big truck, and then it gets smushed.
Yep.
And they're constantly going around cleaning up the evidence of the body swaps. The body snatches, excuse me. I need to use the correct terminology, the snatching. But they are the change agents here, going through making sure that everything is running smoothly. And for the end of the film, we get kind of the reveal that this is all this is like a mass producing thing. This is almost like commercialism, right? Where they are mass producing and distributing the invasion, and it's a factory that they're making, and they're growing the pods, and then they've got the infrastructure and the planning and the distribution.
But the pods aren't being in like farms or factories. It's on basically every known plant that's in San Francisco. I mean, you see them growing on trees. You see them growing on rose bushes.
Right, and I think that's the start.
After that,
but people don't typically sleep outside next to the plant, so that's not really efficient. So then they have to figure out, how does the invasion move indoors, and then once it is, how do they then scale that operation into the nationwide search? And I think that why San Francisco is a great choice for this, right? San Francisco was where we based, was it The Exorcist?
No.
As well?
No, Exorcist was Washington.
Okay. Have we done a San Francisco movie before? Am I just drawing a blank here?
Not yet. Not that I know of.
Okay. San Francisco, I think, is perfect for this because it's wet, it's foggy, it's
the fog,
damp.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just perfect for... I mean, maybe it's like the ideal climate for growing these spores or whatever, but it's just like perfect atmosphere for it. And there's so many landmarks. Like they run past practically every landmark or like show every landmark during the film. But it's just perfect for this kind of invasion. And then I think this is how it spreads out over the rest of the country. If we say that this is the ground zero and now they're expanding out. But I think it's nifty seeing how that kind of evolves through the movie.
I'm just thinking about all the things that seem to be started in San Francisco: the birth of Starfleet, the apes virus, and the Planet of the Apes. Let's see here. Hippie culture. Like San Francisco just seems to
the Revolution, Silicon Valley. You know what I mean? Like
both real and fake. A lot of stuff seems to happen there. So.
Yeah. It's moist and damp, and that's where stuff grows, man.
Well, I think for Star Trek it was picked because that's where the U.S. Navy has command for the Pacific Fleet.
It's where the nuclear vessels are, right?
Alameda,
so you go there.
The bay.
That's across the bay. Yeah,
it's that's kind of why they did this. Because Roddenberry was Navy, so he's like, yeah, it's logical it should be there. It's like, really? But that's where that is. I don't know about other fictional settings why they picked San Fran, so I think because it's
San Francisco
not
is
LA.
a visually appealing city. I mean, again, you have to say it's very photogenic.
Oh yeah,
and especially for Invasion of the Body Snatchers, it uses the fog as this kind of noir element. It creates this atmosphere, foreboding, especially at night when you have a lot of night shoots. Great use of lighting. I got to say that the lighting here is just immaculate. And since
the lighting is good, and the sound effects.
Yes.
The stuff in this movie, despite the weird moments of hearing bagpipes and then later banjos, which don't really fit for any reason in the. Like, why did we need to hear Amazing Grace kind of in the middle of it?
It's music.
Another callback to the original film.
Music.
But you realize that it's not actually, like, that's just in his head.
Yeah.
Like, he thinks that's his salvation, and then he realizes it's not.
It's his funeral.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really think about it, I mean, at this particular point, when he goes to see. What happens? He goes to see the greenhouse. That's the beginning of the end, right? He comes away from he steps away, and Brooke Adams falls asleep, and by that point, it's pretty much over, right? Or it's he's just fighting alone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is kind of also a fugitive movie. Mm-hmm. This goes from kind of the paranoia thriller to the on the run kind of how are we going to get away fugitive movie to it's almost like a Bourne movie or something at times, right? Mm-hmm. But again, I don't know. All right, I like Donald Sutherland. I like Brooke Adams, who is another repeat for Arthouse of Horror. She was in the Dead Zone, and
excuse me,
bless you, Jeff Goldblum. I think in his first film role here, where we realize he's always been Jeff Goldblum in movies.
Yeah.
I mean, he's in Nashville.
He's in Nashville.
He was in Nashville with the motorcycle.
Right, but wasn't this his first film role?
Nashville was 76.
He's Nashville was
okay. Yeah,
75. One of the two.
That's a good point.
But we do get sexy.
But still,
this is sexy Goldblum comes from this.
Yeah,
that's true.
Right. But he's always been Jeff Goldblum. It's just the scripts that are different, and they just kind of adapt to him. I don't know. I don't know if this is a good story. I think it's executed not well but competently. Like, maybe not executed artistically, but it's executed, I guess, decently, right? Like, there aren't glaring moments where the film falls flat, but there's no real moment where it soars either. And so I kind of feel like they keep remaking this because they're like, well, we can do it better this time. Yeah. And then they're like, well, that wasn't perfect. And then, we'll do a parody. Okay, cool. Or we'll do it with high schoolers or whatever.
I don't see where you're coming from with this one because, how more artistic can you get considering that it has great lighting? From the visual perspective, it has the most...
I'm saying the technical aspects of the film are fine. Like, there's nothing I can point to and say bad filmmaking. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, it doesn't grab me as an excellent use of the source material or the subject matter. Like there could be better stuff here. It feels like there's some wasted potential, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. Do you guys feel the same way?
How would you use that potential, out of curiosity?
Well, no, I want to hear what the other guys think first, and then we'll talk about how we could remake it again.
Okay.
Well, I would think part of that is because this movie feels very much of the time. We're talking about it's a thriller, almost horror film that's almost was a full 2 hours, isn't it? It's like an hour 50 something.
Yeah, it's 2 hours, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a 2 hour movie, which is something we're not used to anymore. And you have all those long extended cuts where like they're sitting outside the house as he goes to drop her off, and the camera starts up at the house and slowly pans down to the car, and it's an 8-second shot to establish that they're sitting outside the house, and then she gets out of the car and walks in. And like in today's take of that scene, they would have cut immediately to the car. Like it's a very much a 70s film with the extended scenes, long drawn out sequences, and so it feels very much of the time. And so I think that's why there's not that kind of immediacy that we see usually in film editing these days.
Hold on, before we go any further, let's put it this way. If we're talking about remakes, it's an old sci-fi horror classic. It has lots of running and full of shadows and night and some explosions. Who's directing this again?
If you remade it?
Admit it.
Oh, no. I refuse
Come on,
to.
gotta admit it.
No. No explosions. I'm trying to match the tone that they scream in, and I can't, but...
It'd be tough to do.
God.
Just say it. Just
Something
saying,
the aliens
we're talking
have
about
to do
remakes, you know who'll be doing it.
When the aliens replace people, they have to like put a new organ in there just so they can make that noise.
Yeah, just so they can hit that. They can hit that note.
Yeah.
Something from the pod stays in the vocal cords.
Yeah, that's gotta.
Oh, I love that scream. That scream is awesome.
I want to go back to the point that I'm
go ahead,
really laboring here, trying to make, because Kent, do you feel like this is like the best potential version of this story, or do you think that this is version 2.0? Well, it's actually version 3.0 because I think it was a book first and then a movie, and then
in the visual medium, it's version 2. We'll say that.
This is 2.5. But do they nail it here, or am I wrong in thinking that
for the period of 70s sci-fi, not 70s horror, but 70s sci-fi, they nail it, because sci-fi in the 70s, if you're not Star Wars, is kind of this slowly paced thing. I mean, we look at the Star Trek the Motion Picture in a year or so after this from Nimoy. It's like, let me fall asleep now. Have they gone anywhere? No. Okay, I just woke up from a nap and I'm replaced by a pod and they haven't done anything. I mean, that was that era. Now, in the modern era, could they do it where it fits our 20 teens aspects of how you would pace a science fiction or horror movie? Yeah, it could be much improved to fit today's standards. By their standards, it's running fine.
But I don't know, like at this particular point, we've even brought it up, is the fact that there is the sense that we have spoofs and we have parodies, we have imitations, and those imitations have diluted this brand. Well, even though it's not a Body Snatchers movie, there's been so much. It's kind of like the slasher at this particular point.
Well, I would say it's a genre or an archetype of horror,
and it's really entered the general vocabulary of pointing at a group of people, typically in politics, and saying, what's up with those pod people that all think the same way and all vote the same way? And I mean, I'm willing to make a joke here, spoiler alert, for the next few episodes of Arthouse Legends, where we cover political films. This could be seen as a political film. All these people emerge from pods, and they're voting one ticket.
All of 70
and
films are political.
the zombie films themselves are political commentary or social commentary. Sci-fi itself is social and political commentary. And I feel like this is playing with those ideas and flirting with those ideas, but it never sticks the landing. And even the end, which I think is a great ending for a film, and obviously, I think, kind of courageous in that it shows like us losing, right? It ends in defeat in terms of countering this invasion. But I think that even the end of the film kind of just blinks away from confronting the horror of the film, or confronting the implications of what this is all getting at. I think that there's missed potential, and I think that's my argument for why these keep getting remade.
Well, what about you, Anthony?
And again,
sorry.
And I think again, every generation, and this is why we see these remade kind of generationally. Every generation wants to put their own anxieties and fears on this archetype, like whether it's a fear of communism or fear of commercialization, a fear of destabilizing the environment, or what have you. There's always a way in which we're going to feel alienated from our peers, and why not play on that alienation to have an alien invasion be part of that. But
well, what about you, Anthony?
Oh no, yeah, I definitely agree, because the Body Snatchers, the zombie attack, they always it's that constant update, constant reimagining of that generation's version of what they're afraid of, what they're fighting against, and what they're fighting with. And so yeah, for of the time, I think this movie was perfect for the end of the 70s. They nailed the era, the people, the society's, the director looking at society's fears at that time, and how they would, try to fight that as a community. This guy it's basically, it's a food inspector. He has no real power in the government, but he's a government agent, and yet he doesn't go to work. He doesn't go get all his, employees. He gathers his friends around him.
Well, no, he tries.
His way
we see him
fight.
try to get a hold of the mayor and being.
Well, yeah, like he tries calling them, but it's literally he gathers his friends around him as his way to save himself. Like that's his big fight against this alien invasion, is to gather his friends, not to go to work and grab all the cops and go try to grab the mayor and actually physically go to those places. Like he tries calling. But
well,
he really doesn't go.
That meeting in Union Park with the agent says, "Oh, well, hold on, we're gonna get into it, but just stay by your phone."
Well, at that point, he's just being delayed by pod people.
Right, it's bureaucracy.
Yeah.
He's running up against the bureaucracy of 1970s America. Even at that time, it was difficult to go through the phone and reach an actual person. Maybe you didn't have robo voice operators, but you still had layers that you had to go through to get to someone who could actually make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was amazingly shocking to watch people routinely dialing on rotary phones, waiting
talking
to
operators,
talking to operators, try to get a hold of me later, like phrases like that, all this stuff that's no longer even part of our zeitgeist, because we just expect everybody to always be connected. And yeah, so the idea of, I'm going to leave the house, and while I'm walking to my office, nobody can contact me. Like, that's so foreign now, that watching this film, like, that really struck me, how much of a different world it was technology-wise.
Yeah. All right, so a few kind of additional ties that I wanted to bring up in regards to the between the original film and this one. The taxi cab driver is actually the original director, Don Siegel.
Okay.
So
nice.
That was kind of a cool thing. Something that is kind of terrifying, because they didn't have the budget. Don Siegel was required to actually drive that cab, and when they did that, they didn't take into account that Don Siegel was technically legally blind, and he didn't have his glasses on.
No!
Yeah, so just thought that she'd
the look on their face where they're like, "Where are we going?" is real terror.
Okay.
That's real terror when they're like, "What's happening?"
But I thought it was awesome. I love the fact. I actually love that entire sequence, because you're wondering, is he a pod person? Is he not a pod person? And of course, he is a pod person. When he gets up to the blockade, they're in the back. Like, damn. I mean, it's just like that whole idea of you can't trust anybody. Nobody. it's like it's kind of like going back to the Matrix in that sense, right? I mean, just
anyone can be the enemy. Anyone.
Yeah. And so, like when you see Goldblum coming to the office, is like you think for a moment, oh, he's a good guy, and then you realize, no, he's part of them now. And
because instantly they're relieved, and then they go from relieved to scared again in a moment, and you see it just crush them. Yeah. Like the acting in that sequence is fantastic, as you see, Donald Sutherland and what's her name, Brooke.
Yeah, Brooke Adams.
Brooke Adams. Yeah, you see both of them, like they kind of like their eyes brighten and they both smile, and then as soon as you see their eyes, there's people behind him, it just crushes them.
Now that's actually an interesting scene that we're now at, because I do want to ask this question. The way that Nimoy puts it in the film about what the positive elements of being a pod person, that there's no suffering, there's no pain, but you have to give up your emotions. Is that something that the film could be arguing is a good thing, that perhaps that the pod invasion isn't all that bad? Or do you find this to be something that is negligible, or something that you would fight against? Would you accept being a pod person?
I'll bring up one last, well, okay, probably not the last time, but one more time, The World's End, which has this argument directly, if not drunkenly, in terms of, well, who are you to say that you're like, okay, so you're going to take away suffering and pain and all this stuff, and like, who's to say that that's your right, that we as humans have a right to screw things up because we have free will, and who are you to say that even if you can take away these things, you're taking away our freedom, our right to choose our own path or destiny, and to muck things up along the way. And honestly, look, if the aliens had come to Earth and said, okay, our method of survival will be to take over the most prolific and successful species on the planet, and they took over bunny rabbits, like, the humans would be like, yeah, all right, fine, whatever, we'll have pod bunnies, and whatever, they're still cute, we don't really care, and then we could all live in harmony with each other. But they're taking over humans, and now they're taking over our free will. Well, that aggression will not stand, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what about you, Kent?
Their attitude and their method reminds me like they're the organic Borg. We are the Borg, you will adapt to service us. Because they say, it's our right to live. That's what things do. It's like, yeah, but you're not really... You are living, but you're living at the expense of something else. They're not saying, oh, well, what they're not telling you... Okay, they're trying to say, you will be you, just no emotions. Okay, but apparently you're plugged into this hive mind. Because how else does the Leonard Nimoy character know the backstory of the race? He shouldn't know it. I mean, if you just woke up and didn't have emotions and were like, oh, okay, that's one thing, but all of them know each other and they're all coordinated and cooperating. That's a change in the you that you are. They could ask for volunteers. I mean, there may be people that are like, that know they're emotionally out of whack. They're so... Counseling doesn't work. Nothing works. They could take people on death row. Oh, they're solved. They're not the same person, and they're not going to have the emotions to kill anybody anymore. Boom, we're done here. And they're now productive, emotionless. Well, they're helping both species now. There's all sorts of ways to do this, but no, they walk in and go, we know what's best for your planet. Like a big bureaucracy that...
And it should be said that they came from a dying world.
Which
world
I
that
say they
killed.
Yes. It wasn't the planet died because of something else. They overate
and it. Do you on it, like, if this is your method of propagating and expanding your species and you can survive in the vacuum of space as a pod, like, do you really have are they really an intelligent race, or are they just a virus?
They're a hive mind virus. They're a fungus.
Do they have
fungus that's connected telepathically with each other?
Do they have an investment in caring for a planet? Are they going to be better stewards of planet Earth than we are?
They'll eat Earth after a
I mean, it's hard to argue
so
they could be worse, but at the same time,
I hated to. They remind me of. Okay, they remind me of the Tyranids from Warhammer 40k.
Well, I'll just put it this way: they won't be worrying about the color shade that they have for their '76 Buick. In fact, a lot of the emotional elements that would come across that are a big draw on human society, because the thing we don't really realize is
they're not going to make art. They're not going to make
television. That's what you lose.
They're not going to make.
You lose everything.
They're not going to make podcasts.
You lose everything creative.
And then you wonder also, do they innovate?
No.
Do they?
I don't think they do.
Like, do they come up with a better way of propagating their pods or whatever?
We don't. We're not around them long enough to know exactly if there's any kind of evolution.
I mean,
involved.
They basically have a greenhouse that they're growing their pods in, and it's, obviously a massive fire hazard because it's destroyed by an axe.
It's a ad hoc. I mean, it's a converted warehouse that they just went, hey, if we have lights, we have heat, we have this, because we took over two botanists, and boom, they figured out how to do it.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Anthony? Would you take up the pod people's proposition?
Definitely not. Yeah, I mean, the no pain, no suffering, hive mind, so you're never alone sounds like fun, but not for the lack of free will.
And the lack of sex.
Definitely not.
Come on.
That's
you're probably you're not gonna have the fun of sex either. Yeah, they're just
look how they reproduce. It's all it's all pods and petals and little wispy fat hairs there on you.
Yeah, definitely not worth it.
All right. So let's talk about the ending. Are we ready?
Maybe for Brooke Adams topless, just walking around, but I don't know necessarily. They seem to all put on clothes after that.
Well, it's interesting. The reason why she agreed to do it, she has body issue problems, and she's always thought that she was ugly. And so, one of her wardrobers, a friend of hers, had said, "Well, why don't you do it for people who don't believe that they're the prettiest person? Show them, what a normal person looks like." And so that's why she did it. And quite honestly, I don't know about you, but she's pretty attractive.
Yeah. 5 years later, she takes her top off in the dead zone, and there's still no.
Yeah, she looked great.
Yeah,
just saying.
How many of you were like, why is Lois Lane in this? Why is Margot
I thought
Kidder
it was too, and I had to look up and go, no, it isn't.
Yeah, there's some definite similarities in the facial features of the two of those actresses.
Person. Okay.
Yeah, she's a pod person too, Yeah.
I will say though that her acting is a lot better here than it was in Dead Zone.
Dead Zone, they didn't give her much, I don't think.
Yeah.
This is, I think, a more nuanced.
Well, she actually has a plot. She actually has, there's stakes for her. That there's stuff there, her emotion, the people that she's around are changing, and this is affecting her, and it gives her a lot more to do. Whereas when Dead Zone, she was just basic. What they could have done with her, they should have just put in someone else. But here it's just like. She actually matters, and what happens to her when she becomes a pod person, it's emotionally breaking, right? It's like, damn, it's just your heart sinks, right? Because if she could go, then everyone can go, which of course gets us to the awesome finale. But I really want to talk about this ending because I have to admit I just didn't see it coming. Simply because they set it up so damn well. They set up with Veronica Cartwright showing how you could trick the pod people by just suppressing your emotions, and that it's possible to navigate this world,
to pass as a pod person.
Yes.
Let's say. So the fact that you can act like a pod person indicates that they don't necessarily have a telepathic link. Like when you walk up to a pod person, they don't say hello with their minds.
Nope.
You know what I mean?
No, they made that very
like
clear.
You can, yeah, you can pass as a pod person, which is kind of an interesting prospect.
They have pod speak. You know, the screeching is a form of verbal alert, verbal communication from pod to pod, or pod person to pod person. But yeah, there's no telepathic. I believe that once the system is complete, I think that they wouldn't talk. They'll just kind of screech at each other, and that'll communicate, what they're doing with one another. But yeah, you really don't see a lot of verbal communication between pod to pod.
Maybe it's all pheromones and pollen or something. We don't know.
Perhaps. Yeah. But if that were the case, then you couldn't fool them, just by acting like them.
Or they're just not checking all the time. They're not. It's very.
Mm-hmm.
They've already assumed that they won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a pretty arrogant space
Those
invasion.
arrogant pod people. How dare they?
Or if they put out a summons like everybody come and collect pods to pass out, they assume the only people showing up are people to get pods.
Well, and the fact that they're sending pods to Sausalito, like, no, not Sausalito.
Well, they're giving out directions via loudspeaker.
Yeah.
So I think that in itself kind of indicates that they're not omniscient.
Yeah.
Or it's just to create.
Yeah, there wasn't a true sentient telepathic hive mind for sure.
There's no pod queen up on the sphere giving them orders or whatever.
Yeah. But I have to admit, though, Veronica Cartwright, in the end, she's coming up to Donald Sutherland, who's supposedly fooling the system, pretending to be one of them.
Sitting in his office, cutting out newspaper clippings.
Just like we've seen him before,
just like John Hurt in 1984, he's joined the team.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that last moment that, she comes up to him and he does the screech. And this has actually become an internet meme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I knew how the movie would end, because of that meme.
Yeah.
I was waiting the entire time for it, and there it was.
And Veronica Cartwright didn't know that was going to happen. They kept that from her so that when he did that, it freaked her out. And just like a great actress that she is, she understood and did the rest.
Did he do the screech, or did they add
well,
that
no,
in post?
no. The screech came post, but he did the
motion,
the cues.
Yeah, he distorted his face and screamed.
Okay.
And she caught on, and yeah, it was great. I love that ending. That ending is one of the best endings of all time, just because it built up. Every scene that we had prior built up to this scene. If you didn't understand where all this stuff came from, the screeching, the contortion, the fact that he is going about his everyday, if you didn't catch all these things and you didn't if you didn't have that conception that he was pretending, then this wouldn't work. And her reaction, knowing that she is alone, that she could be the last human, and that possibly because she had opened herself up in this space, that she's going to get captured, right?
Yeah.
There's very little escape for her. She could escape, maybe, but very unlikely. And it ends with that knowledge. It just, and the way that it ends with no music, nothing. The rest of the credits are in complete silence, just leaving you there with your thoughts. Just beautiful. Just beautiful. But am I alone on this? Does this?
It's a great ending.
Good.
It's a great ending.
The ending was fantastic.
And again, it's dark. It's appropriately dark. I don't know if the movie earns the darkness of it, because it still kind of leaves you with like, yeah, but he could still be faking, right? Like he could be
only if he snapped psychologically, where he thinks he's a pod person, but he's
no,
not
because
a pod person.
The screech is unearthly.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I feel like he could hit that note.
No.
Come on.
It's awesome. He can hit that note naturally.
No. That is a Ben Burt special. Okay, Ben Burt came up with that.
I mean, there's something to be said for kind of the Stockholm Syndrome aspect of it, which would be that he has seen, like, everything has kind of broken in him. I think maybe Brooke Adams dying and, like, everything he's done has failed. If you can't beat him, join him. And so he like fully puts himself in to the system there. And yeah, maybe he never went to sleep. Maybe he is just kind of a zombie in his own way. And then that you kind of also think about, well, shit, is that a fate worse than like submitting to the invasion? The fact that now you're living this hell and the only way for you to survive is to sell out the only friend you have left.
Does anyone else
screaming when you see him
find this plausible? I mean,
not really.
the only one that's
it's more plausible if you were going to surrender, you would just fall asleep and surrender.
I mean, just fall asleep.
I don't know. Like,
give in.
I think, like, I don't know. There's
asleep,
something to, like,
flower.
if he whispered to her and said, "I'm so sorry," and then he screamed. Like,
now you're projecting. It's like that's what you want.
That is what I want from this movie. Like, I want it to go the step further and give us the like dark answer. Like,
it's not dark enough. It's like you're saying you don't believe that it's dark enough, and now you're saying that
I don't know. I wanted just a like one more twist. I wanted one more twist.
No, that would have been too many. That would have been way too much. At that particular point, I would say fuck it and fuck you. That would if it went that far, I would have completely shut off, because at that point, it was just enough. It was beautiful. It was perfect the way it was. It was just it's I'm not gonna rage quit, but I am.
Fine. Put it in the remake.
Shame.
Yes.
Shame.
When you remake the movie, you can put that in there. Yes.
Exactly.
There you go.
There you go. But what about you? What about you, Kent? What do you think?
What about his ending?
Yeah, the ending. What do you think of of the ending we got? Would you change it? Would you make it better?
Oh, well, there's only that. Does the original end? For some reason, I have this image of somebody running around screaming, "You're next," and I don't remember if that's the original or.
Well, no, "You're next" is a part of the finale of Invasion of Body Snatchers. But what it was is that after that, he's picked up by the police and he's in the psychiatrist's office because they think he's crazy. And then someone brings out that there's these crazy pods coming out of this little town. And that reveals that he's telling the truth, and then all hands on deck.
Because I kind of expected that moment. For some reason, I thought that moment was in this version. So when it finally hit at the end with him screeching, it's like, okay, I know this is coming because, I've seen the internet meme. It was, there's that icon is out there as a identifier for people online. I wish I had a video of me doing it right now because I'm pointing and opening with my mouth, and I just realized, we're on an audio format. What a great way for me to do this. But But
that's the face Eric made at me when I proposed my twist.
Yeah.
No, my jaw was just on the floor.
Honestly, I want the wig of his hair, and I want that jacket, and I would do that for Halloween in a heartbeat.
You want to be him for Halloween?
Yes.
Yeah, just go around screaming at people.
Yeah.
And you know what? You could put a mask on your dog and just walk around.
Oh, he'd hate it.
See if anybody gets it.
Now that's a perfect dog Halloween costume right there.
Yes.
Just a nice human face.
Yeah.
Well, and you could
stick it on
3D
him.
print that now because you could just do a scan of your face and.
I could, but I don't think I have enough plastic right now. Yeah.
And then put some peanut butter on the lips so that the dog will try to lick it off.
Yeah. Yes. He's got the wrong shaped face for that, though. He's got a longer snout. If he was a shorter snout, it would work. But yeah. Where were we? Oh yeah, the ending.
What about you, Anthony? Come on.
Go, Anthony.
Come on.
Yes.
I dig the ending. It's following along with your hero all the way through the film. He does everything he can to try to save his damsel in distress, and then finally loses her. And then you see him, and you think that he's passing, and then for that last moment where she says his name, he turns, and then he reveals, oh no, he's changed. He already lost, and so you're like, oh, there is no hope. The invasion has won. Mm-hmm. Like, it was a fantastic ending. I loved it.
All right. So I have one last question.
Okay, but who had the sadder existence, do you think? That she's been passing this whole time with no friends by herself, or that he gave in and has no feeling? Because she still has to feel.
No, because he gave in. The thing is that by that particular point, the way I got it was that after he lost her,
yeah, but once you give in, you don't feel like you've given in. Like, your suffering ends. She's still suffering by continuing to pretend to pass.
Who are we talking about? Veronica Cartwright? Or are we talking about Brooke Adams?
Yeah, no, Veronica Cartwright. Yeah, because that's the last betrayal.
Yeah,
is that she thinks that's the one last human left in the city that might help her.
Yeah,
and then he turns around and screams.
Yeah,
and so the crushing of her spirit and the loss of her hope is the last betrayal.
Yeah, it's a rat turd.
Yeah. It wasn't a caper.
All right, I have one more question. And this is pretty important. So after seeing this film, would you go back to see perhaps the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers? Would you check out the 90s or the 2000s version of this movie? Or would you check out any of the spoofs? If you haven't seen The World's End or any of the TV versions, would you go back to that?
I would want to see the original. World's End, has been on my list to see because it's part of the Coronado trilogy, not for any other reason, but because it's part of that.
Cornetto, get it right.
Huh?
Cornetto.
I think you said Coronado, which I believe is something different.
Yeah, it's an ice cream. It's an ice cream, not a car.
Yes.
No, it's not a conquistador. Okay.
El conquistador. No.
So good. And
what else,
for that one, Hot Fuzz was my favorite, and then World's End has kind of like crept up there for me. It's good, and it plays on all of the tropes and ideas in here, and does them in kind of a really neat way. And also the ending of that one is kind of bleak, also. But
no, actually, it's very hopeful. But that would be a whole different podcast.
Yeah,
whole different podcast.
Okay, but there was something else this reminded me of, and I was gonna say it and I lost it. What it was. So,
Anthony, you want to take a shot while Kent takes a moment?
Yeah, I do want to watch the original because I know I haven't seen the 56, and I want to go back and rewatch the 93 because I remember really enjoying that one because that one was all about the military response to the pods.
It was set on a military base.
Yeah, it was all about the military trying to fight the invasion as it's happening. And then, I have no problem anytime going back and watching an Edgar Wright film. I love all of them, and World's End is a fantastic movie. Mm-hmm. And then, I need to go rewatch The Faculty again, too. I really like that one.
Yeah. What about you, Lobster? Would you go back to see the original? Or
Yeah, I would. Again, like I said, this was my first foray into the genre, or into this this film series. And I think it would be neat to see this done maybe as like a limited series on maybe like an HBO or a Netflix format. I think you could pitch it in.
You mean like the NBC series Invasion?
I want to say if they did it not networked, and I don't want to have Invasion in the title. If they did, okay. So when you title a movie Invasion of the Body Snatchers, you take away the element of a little bit of your suspension of disbelief with the paranoia, because I want to have it like Rosemary's Baby, where she's being paranoid, but you as the viewer are still trying to figure out a little bit, like, is she paranoid or is there something going on here? and then have the reveal at the end that they're pod people or whatever. I think if you told the story that way and you suspended, like you put off the body snatcher thing and maybe just called it like paranoia or the conspiracy or something like that. And then
or the arrival?
like you as the viewer were constantly, like you were constantly second guessing yourself and the character to be like, are they being paranoid? Is everything really okay? And then saved it towards the end. I think those are better thrillers. When something's called Invasion of the Body Snatchers, like the first 20 minutes or 30 minutes of this film, they're already into the full-blown alien invasion, and you've thrown out kind of any pretense that something else is going on, and you're full on in it. I think that if they put that off a bit and heighten the suspense a little, it would be a better movie or story. And that's why I think you could do it more with like a limited series. Mm-hmm. Have season 1 be all about the paranoia and the creepiness and what's really going on, and then have that build up to, okay, the reveal of, they're pod people, and then where do you go from there?
Yeah. All right, so we ready for Geek Sheet?
I just remembered one and then thought of another one that kind of took on this. There is an episode of Stargate where aliens come in and use the bodies to create duplicates and then go out to try and conquer Earth and fail. Mm-hmm. The episode is that. And it just dawned on me, there's a Deep Space Nine episode where O'Brien starts thinking everybody on the station has been replaced.
Yeah.
And the truth is, he's the one that's been replaced. And it's kind of the backwards thing where he's been replaced and everybody's just kind of working around to see what
you're the
he's
doppelganger.
up to.
No, you're the doppelganger.
And then at the end he finds out he's the duplicate, and it's an spoiler for that episode, but it's kind of the opposite of this, so it's flipping the trope around, but it gets used a lot, I've noticed, but okay.
So are we ready for Geek Sheet? All right, gentlemen, have at it. Yeah. Who do you want to start with?
We could start with President Snow right up top. So
yeah. So there's a show on right now called Designated Survivor, where Kiefer plays a cabinet secretary who is suddenly thrust into the presidency because Tom Clancy's executive orders comes true, and then that's how I think, like, he's starting to look a lot like Donald as he ages, and I think that's how he becomes President Snow. Like, it just works its way up. Like, no, I don't know. Like, I'm always like, this is what's gonna happen, right? No, I think the Geek Sheet for this one, we've talked about a lot of the characters in this that have been in other things like Spock and obviously Jeff Goldblum is the Fly, and Ian Malcolm and tons of other stuff. But I think that, like, the true Geek Sheet on this is the concept, the trope of the secret invasion. And I think we've talked about that a lot as well.
Yeah.
And come on, Robert Duvall.
Yes,
he did this.
I know.
He did it for an Eddie Bauer jacket.
Yes.
That the director promised him.
That's it?
He's like, you wanna show up for one scene and be a creepy priest?
Well, no, actually, he was
That
just
was
there on
his
set. He was talking to the director about a project that they were working on.
Yeah, they had just done a movie together or something.
Yeah, and it's like, hey, well, since you're here and I need a priest, want to be a priest for a jacket?
Hey, speaking of the director though, Phillip Kaufman, what else has he done?
The Right Stuff. He's also.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
He's he's done quite a bit. Although most of his stuff is stuff that most people don't really care about, but for me, I love. He did a movie called Quills about Marquis de Sade with Jeffrey Rush as the Marquis. He did Rising Sun with Sean Connery and Wesley Snipes.
Screw that. He did Raiders.
Yeah, he wrote.
He wrote the Raiders.
I was gonna say,
Indiana
he might be
Jones
known more for as a writer for Raiders,
all four,
Last Crusade. Is it all four of them? Yeah. The three good ones.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can't really hold the fourth one against him if he did the first three.
No,
Yeah.
he had to get aliens in it somehow.
No, that's a legacy credit. He only
just a second though. So we talked about the right stuff. Here's a movie that flips this on its head, which is The Astronaut's Wife, right? So the astronaut, and I believe it's Charlize Theron is the wife in the movie.
And Johnny
Depp. The astronaut comes back, and he's like different somehow, and she's like, "That's not my husband." But he was body snatched, right? Isn't that the idea there?
I can't remember Astronaut's
Sorry
Wife.
if I just spoiled that movie for anybody, but I don't think you were going to see it anyway.
I can't remember.
Yeah, not if they waited this long.
Yeah. Can't say.
Yeah, I think it was that he was replaced while he was in outer space.
Right, right.
All right. Well, I would like to bring up some crew credits I think are pretty awesome. Michael Chaplin is he actually was the guy who was doing the floor cleaning in the movie, but he's also the cinematographer. Michael Chapman has all kinds of credit. He did Taxi Driver, which we talked about already. He did Raging Bull. He did The Fugitive. He also worked, I believe he actually won the Academy Award for The Right Stuff. Incredible cinematographer. The next one I want to bring up is Aggie Gerard Rogers, who went on to be a nominated another Academy Award winning costume designer. She also did the Return of the Jedi. She did Beetlejuice. She also worked on The Fugitive as well. I believe, see here, the last thing that she did of note was The Hurricane with Denzel Washington. Let's see here. Those pretty much are the big ones that I know about. Were there any others that we want to bring up before we call it? Gentlemen?
No, let's just call it.
No, I think that's it for us.
All right. Kent, Lobster, Anthony, do you agree with the critics on Invasion of the Body Snatchers 1978? Do you give it a pass? Do you give it a fail? Or do you give it a maybe? Anthony?
I give it a pass. For 1978, it is a fantastic sci-fi film.
All right. Anything else?
Nah.
All right. Kent?
I'm for the time. I need to talk myself into this bit, but because I know it doesn't age as well as I think we'd hope it would. It has that 70s issue going with, like Anthony said, 8 seconds between focus on there and then pan down, and like I swear that you could cut 20 minutes out of this movie if you just cut some of those out or did something.
If it was edited today, this exact same film would be an hour and 15 minutes.
Give me a voiceover.
It would be the same length as the original.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's a little problematic, but at the same time, for the 70s, it works in the time frame. It works within its storyline. It works within its effects, its acting, which I need to go and find some people I know that are big Star Trek fans and recommend to them, hey guys, I know you like Leonard Nimoy. Did you ever see this film? And say, go watch it, which is why I'm passing this. Definitely. A definite pass. Almost was a maybe, but it moved in the Passville. So, yeah, I'm going to be semi-evangelizing this and going, hey, this is probably some aspect of Nimoy you haven't seen. Go watch it. Also, Nimoy with Goldberg. I mean, yeah. Goldblum. Sorry, not
Goldblum.
Yeah, tongue-tied.
That's just too much awesome for one movie.
Did you ever think you'd ever see it? Probably not. Did you think it existed? I mean, add in Donald Sutherland.
The only way this could have been better is if they were father and son.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine that dynamic?
Instead. Oh. Yeah. Let's do it.
Oh. I would have been better if they were father and son and rivals.
Ooh,
yeah.
So, yeah, that's me, Lobster.
Yeah, I lied. I said there's the only way it could have been better. There are a lot of ways it could have been better. So this film, it's going to be a maybe for me. I don't think I'm going to put this in my Halloween rotation. Okay. It didn't have what I look for in a Halloween type film, in a horror type movie. This is a conspiracy movie. This is a little bit more of a psychological thriller. or even like a Day of the Condor type political thriller that is not what I'm after with Arthouse of Horror. I want to say that in terms of aliens invading bodies, give me Alien. Let's do another Veronica Cartwright connection. Comes a year later. We talked about it before in Arthouse of Horror. That film plays with the idea of invading the body for the means of propagation of the species, but does it in, I think, a much subtler and yet all the more terrifying way in terms of just for gestation. We're only using you as an incubator. Then we're just going to bust out and continue on our way. And if you get in our way, we'll probably eat you or something. And I think that to me, that's an altogether scarier movie. It's an altogether better made movie. And that film is minimalist by comparison to this one. This feels too broad, there's too much going on. And the scope and speed that this invasion and conspiracy happens at, even within a 2-hour movie, doesn't make sense. So this film packs too much in, and at the same time, it doesn't give the ideas enough room to breathe, and it never really commits fully to the horror. And I think that's kind of the biggest sin that this film makes, is that it never fully commits to the bleakness and the terror of almost the nihilism of what this represents. Alien, which is a film set in the starkness of space, it's about isolation, it's about fear and this almost unstoppable foe, but one that's singular. It's one thing, and you think you can kill it. That to me is a much better horror film than this one. This one gets a maybe from me, because again, I feel like there's enough good stuff here and enough of an influence on other things that I think do this a little bit better, that maybe it's worth seeing in kind of that vein as a sci-fi conspiracy piece. But that's it for me.
Well, I absolutely love this film. I fell in love with it the first time I saw it. I think that this is a brilliant piece of science fiction horror, primarily because it is dealing with that invasion, that sense of not just invasion as the sense of it infiltrating a society or the human race, but the invasion of your own body, the invasion of your brain being transferred into a completely different body that doesn't fully have all the capabilities of your own, and doing so in violation of your spirit and conscience. To me, all of that stuff really does. That's something that came out of this particular film, outside of the other ones, that you truly felt that betrayal, and you've truly felt the hopelessness of being able to fight something that permeates on the greatest weakness of the human body, which is we all have to fall asleep. We all have to give in to that. Our bodies cannot go without sleep, and it's there that we're destroyed. And the way that this film does it, it does it in a beautiful 70s vibe. This is truly a film of the 70s, and it's glorious in that element. I don't want it to be something timeless in that sense, because when it comes to these types of invasion films, it has to be of its period. It has to be saying something about the time that it's telling. And here, this is in that clash between conscience and consumerism. It is in that place where our government and our institutions are failing us, and this movie capitalizes on that, and it does so brilliantly. And it has a very diverse cast, in the sense that everyone here is really giving something unique and different. And I don't know, it just hits all the right notes for me, and something that I wholeheartedly endorse, and that I think that more people need to see, especially with a movie that, again, we don't get this type of movie very often. and one that's truly scary, that truly makes you think, that truly leaves you breathless after the movie's over. And yeah, I love this film. So yes, pass. Absolutely. Gentlemen,
I will say that it's awesome that they made the way that the aliens get you is by making you fall asleep, and then put that in a movie that for 2 hours makes you try to fall asleep, like tries to put you to sleep, and you're like, no, can't fall asleep, can't fall asleep. No, the pod people will get me, but I'm so sleepy. This movie is so slow.
Be glad that you're not telepathic at this point.
Give me Nightmare on Elm Street for movies about people who don't want to fall asleep.
All right, well,
the best ever. Well, the best ever.
Gentlemen, we have come to the close of Arthouse of Horror for 2016. We do have a special secret podcast coming out on Halloween Day. Please feel free to check the feed on Monday. You'll find that there's something just waiting for you there. And then afterwards, it's an election year, isn't it? And we all know that we love this election this year.
We love to talk about
everybody be your pod people for your pod of electors.
So go into your voting pod and disgorge whatever fluids you need to disgorge to cast your vote.
Phrasing.
All right.
Just remember,
but we're not just giving you one election movie this year. Oh, no. We are going 3. Because why not?
You got to give love to the third party.
Yes, and the first one that we are tackling might be hitting a little close to home with one of our candidates, as we are talking about the fictional version of the 1992 election, written by Anonymous, and directed by an Arthouse legend, Mike Nichols, as we talk about I believe it's 1998 Primary Colors, which I have to admit I'm very excited about coming back to. I have a lot to say about this movie, so I'm really excited. And then afterwards, we're going back to, I believe, 1960, where we're talking about a film that I don't think any of you have seen, which is exciting for me because after this, you're never going to see Andy Griffith the same way ever again. As we talk about A Face in the Crowd, which is also our first Elia Kazan movie, so that's also an exciting thing about that. And then afterwards, Kent, what do we have on tap for the final of our trilogy?
Well, we have a movie about somebody who gets captured by the other side and comes back maybe not the same person. Wait, no. Well, yes.
Wait, what?
The Manchurian Candidate.
Yes, and we're talking about the 1960 version of that film.
Yes.
With Frank Sinatra, although I have a feeling that we might have a little bit to say about the Denzel version somewhere in that. And then I believe we have a holiday coming up, don't we, Lobster?
Yeah, so for Thanksgiving, we're going to throw some turkey on the platter and check in with some family drama that happens during the holidays and an ice storm that plays a role. And I believe this is our first Ang Lee joint that we're bringing in.
No, because we did Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Oh, no, you're right. Yeah. My bad. This will be our first American Ang Lee film that we'll be talking about. Sorry.
Yep. I mean, we got Spider-Man, we got Ellen Ripley, we got Wednesday Addams, and Frodo, and all directed by the Hulk's director. So this ought to be interesting.
Don't make him Ang Lee. You wouldn't like him when he's angry.
You're so...
You can cut that one out.
No, I'm not.
No, sorry. I'll save that when we actually do it, because I'll probably tell that joke again.
Yeah. But also, it's about that time we're getting ready for our listener request in January.
Oh, yeah.
So this is that time when you, the audience, get the chance to have a little say in what we're going to be doing for...
You put coal in our stocking for after the holidays when we do our Arthouse rejects.
Fire up the tweets, fire up the Facebooks, whatever you use to contact us. Yeah.
Yes. And you can do so by hitting us up on our Facebook page and our Twitter feed at Arthouse Legends. And if you want to be very silent and sneaky and just kind of tease us a little bit, you can always hit us on the email at arthouselegends@gmail.com. And while you're at it, why don't you go over to iTunes and give us that little 5-star and maybe even a word or two about how awesome we are. Just play up our hugely exaggerated egos as it is, or kind of mention other things about us. But yes, feel free to say what you want about us. It's a great place. And thank you, gentlemen, for giving me this wonderful opportunity to talk about a film that I absolutely love. I hope that y'all have gotten a lot out of it. Anthony, thank you so much for joining us today as well.
Thanks for having me. It was a fun watch, fun movie to talk about.
Anthony Bachman, where can we find you on other places?
You can find me at Anthony Bachman on Twitter, at Bachman Anthony on Instagram. I do a lot of art stuff. I'm an illustrator, and you can find me live Sunday on the Gonna Geek Network for all things good and nerdy, 9 a.m. Mountain Time, because they always give the other times, and damn it, that's where I'm at. So for me, it's 9 a.m.
Rock on.
Yeah. I always mean to be there, but I work. It's hell, and it drives me nuts.
Oh. On Sunday mornings? That's awful.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always live on Gonna Geek Network, and Geeks.live has a live chat room every Sunday, 9 Mountain.
All right. Well, gentlemen, any last words?
I don't want to know how they fertilize those pods. It's something to do with the mud bath, I think. But
it's alien. It doesn't have to go with Earth methods of cross-pollinize. Yeah. Anyway.
All right.
Don't eat the capers.
All right. And this is...
Please leave us a positive review on iTunes.
Music by Kevin MacLeod.
Legends Podcast is not affiliated with any other entity. The opinions stated in this podcast are strictly personal and do not represent the view of its sponsor or any other person or entity. No infringement is intended.